Hello everyone, my name is Auro and welcome to the 27th devlog of my base building game, Chambers of Devious Design. In this devlog, I'll be mostly talking about one major change I made to the core gameplay of my game. Alright, so the major change is related to how destroyed rooms function in my game. Previously, how it worked was that if you destroyed a room, the room was destroyed and it just stayed there on the map. You couldn't build on top of it, you couldn't shoot through it. It basically just functioned as a wall on the map. While this functionality was alright, I felt that gameplay-wise it wasn't very fun in many cases. For example, let's say there are two players competing and they're kind of like building next to each other and then shooting also each other. The likely outcome of that scenario would be that after a while both players would have this kind of barriers of destroyed rooms next to their core compound. And when you have that wall between players, it just kind of kills all the interaction between them. So after that they're just both playing a single player game basically, which can still of course be fun, but I don't think it's as fun as playing interactively against each other. This was something I had been thinking about for a long while now, and I also got a few comments about it when I released the demo for Steam Next Fest. So what I decided to do was that I would make my destroyed rooms disappear. The first thing I focused on was just making the rooms disappear after being destroyed, and that was actually very easy to do. And I also decided that I would make the rooms disappear at the end of the turn, so there isn't any confusion if the room should disappear before the next cannonball hits or something like that. So there's a definite phase in the game that says, okay, now let's disappear the rooms and then let's continue the game. When I had the disappearing in place, there were a few problems I need to solve. Basically, I had two main problems. One is that the doorways look kind of funny. I mean the ones that are next to the destroyed rooms. They are not open doorways anymore, but yeah, they basically have no functionality and they just visually look awkward there. And the other problem, which is more impactful gameplay wise, is that if you destroy rooms in the middle of a chain of rooms, what you are left with is kind of this awkward looking scatter of rooms, just singular rooms in the middle of nowhere, not connected to anything. First of all, I decided to solve the door problem by visually closing the doors that have been completed, and when the room disappears, the doors just also disappear. Whereas if the destroyed room was blocking some door that was not connected, then that door would reappear visually, and that actually is a change that also has these tactical implications. So if one room is blocking some of your critical doors that you would like to complete, then you can destroy that blocking room and then the doors reappear. So you can now connect those doors and complete the room that you couldn't complete before. I also added this little fade to the disappearing room so it doesn't look quite so crude. And then the other problem of singular rooms being scattered around the map, I solved it with this. Let's see what happens if I destroy this room there. So yeah, I decided that if some rooms are not connected to the main compound, which is here, then they will get disabled. And I made the decision that in this case, disabled means that you will still get the score from these rooms, but you just cannot continue building from them, and you also can't target them with any of your targetable skills. One more dramatic option would also have been to make it so that you also won't get the score of the disabled rooms, but I felt like that would be like too strong of a move in the game. If the AI did it to human player, it could cause a lot of frustration to like... Basically it could ruin your whole game in just one move, and likewise if you did it to the AI, that one move could just win the game over for you. Like even now, cutting off like this part of the compound can be very impactful, but it's still a salvageable situation. And actually, speaking of salvaging, you can actually reclaim these rooms if you connect a room next to them. So if I place this here, you can see it doesn't even like connect the doorway. I figured you just need to place it next to the room. So yeah, we place that here, and then these are now just normal rooms again. You can continue building from them over here. One issue I also had to think about was that like which parts of the rooms will get disabled. Like for example, if this blue room here gets destroyed, then yeah, it's obvious that okay, this magic room here gets disabled, but what if this gray hallway here gets disabled? So do you disable these 2 rooms here or these 4 rooms? At first I was thinking that maybe I could think of like it so that the largest amount of rooms is kind of like the main compound, so the smaller amount of rooms will get disabled. But I figured that requires some extra logic in the game and lots of calculation when rooms get destroyed, at least potentially. So I figured the easier and maybe more understandable solution is that kind of like your starter room is the like basis of everything. Everything that is connected to your starter room is part of the main compound. And to make that actually work, I had to make it so that your starter room is indestructible by default. I mean, otherwise just destroy the starter room and I guess you win the game, or I don't know what would actually happen. So yeah, that's also one change I made. I think that's all changes I made with this destruction thing, and I think this will be a very, very impactful change. It kind of like changes the whole dynamic how the game is played, and it adds a lot to the like tactical elements of the game. It lets you limit where the other players building, and yeah, you can also like remove some annoyances next to your own room, and yeah, basically there are a lot of new possibilities that you can do with this new change in the game. On the downside, I think this change could cause some like additional frustration for some players, because yeah, if you cut off a certain part of your layer, it can be very impactful. So some players might not like that happens against them, and it can cause some new bugs also, because it is a pretty like significant change gameplay wise, I think, and code wise. And yeah, of course there's also the like AI consideration. How well can the AI play with this new change? I already tried to add some logic there, so the AI, at least in certain situations, has a understanding that okay, this move will like cut off a chain of rooms, so that is a good thing, so I should try to do that. But it's a pretty simple change I made, so it's certainly not like I don't know. I will have to see if the like AI still needs improvement on that front or not. I would love to hear your feedback on this. What do you think about this change, and any thoughts you have about this change? I would love to hear it. Usually I try to avoid making any like this impactful changes this far into the development, because you never know what all the downstream effects are of big changes. So far I think I have been lucky that this change hasn't caused any unforeseen issues, at least not any big ones. But yeah, you never know. Aside from working on this destroyed rooms thing, I also spent a lot of time writing the campaign text for the game. This was something that I really didn't enjoy that much. I mean, I like coming up with concepts for story and the themes for stories, but the actual writing, when you have a requirement that okay, I need to write this much text and it needs to contain these things and maybe also be funny and feel the purposes that that text is for. It was quite a painful process, but luckily it is now behind me, and I hope that the quality of that text is alright. I mean, this is not a story game. The story is kind of this, an additional side thing that I just needed to do. So there is some kind of a campaign also. I mean, if there was no story and no text at all in the campaign, I think it would feel kind of funny, not a campaign at all. So yeah, that's something that I just had to do. The kind of annoying part of that is that will also have a significant impact on the costs of the game, because, well, I don't remember, was it something 8,000 words that I wrote for the campaign, and when you localize that, it luckily isn't something that will break my budget, but localizing that will still be the one of the biggest costs in the game, and all that is just for something a side thing that is not a core part of the game. So yeah, I don't know, but that's probably one aspect where I could have saved some money if I was somehow able to skate by without the story, which is not essential for the game. But I don't know, I couldn't really come up with any nice alternatives, so yeah, maybe I just needed to spend that money. If I'm feeling really stingy about it, I could maybe get some of the translations with a machine translation for some of the less used languages. I don't know, I'll have to see about it. And speaking of localization, I actually didn't notice that while I was filming this, all these texts were actually already in Finnish. So, well, actually, yeah, not all of them, but some of the text. So that's one thing I also have been doing, kind of doing the localization prep, adding the localization component to all of this buttons and text, so that I know that my localization file is not missing any of the text that I have in the game. But I feel like it is inevitable that I will miss some part and then we'll need to get that translated later on. But yeah, that was actually one very handy part about Mortal Glory, that I localized it after release. So I pretty much knew at that point all the text that I needed, and it was just a process of collecting all those into one file. But now with this game, I am still in the development phase, so naturally I will also generate new text that will need to be localized, while I would also like to start the localization process already, so because yeah, that also takes time, so that it won't delay the release of the game. But yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll still have to do it in 2 parts probably, but I think I will aim that I could maybe start the localization already in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, something like that. I think it would be very nice to get that already on the way also. aside from that stuff, I also worked a bit with the campaign side of things, how the unlocks function in the game, and when you complete a campaign that something happens and things like that. Kind of like luckily small things that just had to be done. That's actually everything I worked on in the last 2 weeks. I would love to hear what you think about all these changes I made, especially the destroyed rooms thing. Alright, but hey, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.